Hey, I'm Canadian rocker Tommy Gunn, and you got more Joe Tilley sports coming up.
What a turnaround by the Blue Jays. Why are they playing so well? And we'll talk about the Expos, why they left Montreal. Danny Gallagher joins the program. Joe Tilley's Great Canadian Sports Show coming up. All right, we turn our attention now to baseball. This gentleman grew up in Renfrew, Ontario, 5 decades as a sports writer, former Expos beat writer, covered the Blue Jays, Montreal Daily News, regular there. He worked for the Ottawa Sun. He worked for the Globe and Mail. He is the author of 10 books, 7 of them on the Montreal Expos. The latest is Always Remembered, New Revelations and Old Tales about those fabulous Expos. Ladies and gentlemen, Danny Gallagher. Welcome to the show, Danny.
Look at Joe. Thanks a million for having me on the show.
I just finished reading the book last night, cramming for the exam. You know how you do things. Right? The last minute, I'm the last minute guy. Great book. Some great interviews with some players, some obscure players, trainers, coaches, fans. Just some incredible stories in there. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Brought back some great memories. And I have to admit, I welled up a little bit when I went through that. The Expos leaving once again. But there's so many untold stories in there, like, Bill Seagraves, who chose to dig septic tanks over playing for the Expos way back when, we're signing with the Expos. Tell us a little bit about that one.
Well, Bill Seagraves, went to spring training with the Expos several times in the early 70s and decided that he was going to make more money in the septic tank family business than he would with the Expos, because his future with the Expos was kind of a little bit dicey. He wasn't necessarily, the greatest ball player they had. So he decided to go back into the family business, and that's what he's still doing to this day in that particular business.
Up to his neck in poop, as they might say. So I guess it sounds like maybe he made the right choice after all.
What's that, Joe?
Maybe he made the right choice after all. If he's family business that makes a lot of money, then yeah. Another guy I want to talk to you a little bit about is Coco LeBoy. Led the expansion Expos in '69 with 18 homers, a team high 83 runs driven in, including a 3-run dinger in the Expos' first ever game, beating Ron Taylor in the Mets. Canadian Ron Taylor in the Mets 11-10. But he was second in the rookie voting in the year voting to Ted Sizemore of the Dodgers, who had 4 homers and 43 RBI. Now, how does that happen?
That is kind of ridiculous, Joe. Coco had such a great season, so many more homers and RBIs than Ted Sizemore. I have no idea. I could never find out how that decision came about, where the writers voted Ted Sizemore the Rookie of the Year that year.
As I'm reading along the book, I'm going to bring in a few of the stories that stuck out for me. Rusty Staub, La Grande Orange. What do you think made him so popular as an Expo? I mean, he eventually had his number 10 retired by the Expos. He was a 6-time All-Star, 5 in a row from 67 to 71. But what was it about Rusty that really had the fans on his side and really made him so popular? I guess with the media as well.
Yeah, he had a pretty good career going with the Houston Astros. So he had some good offensive numbers that he brought to Montreal, and he continued to supply those big numbers. And he had the orange-colored hair that was kind of an attraction to the fans. He could speak a little bit of French, and of course, his production on the field really endeared him to the Expos fans from 69, 70, and 71.
Ken Singleton, a famous broadcaster, he came over from the Mets in the Staub trade. They ended up trading Rusty Staub. He ended up coming back to the club, but his first full season as an Expo was pretty good. But they didn't want to pay Ken Singleton. Why is that? And apparently that didn't work out too well for them.
Yeah, I could never understand that trade to Baltimore. He was putting up some pretty good numbers, and he kind of fell off a bit in '74, but he was still very, very young. And I'd heard, just as you mentioned, that he would maybe getting a little bit expensive. I don't know. And then that was one of the reasons why they traded him to Baltimore, and that trade was really, really lopsided. They traded Mike Torres with Ken Singleton because they wanted to shore up their pitching with an established major league pitcher, and that was Dave McNally, and that turned out to be a disaster because McNally quit halfway through the '75 season, and in the meantime, for the next number of years, Ken Singleton turned his career into quite an adventure with the Baltimore Orioles, becoming one of the greatest players in major league history. And it was a really bad trade for the Expos.
Was it a case of them being maybe a little bit cheap back in the early days and not wanting to spend the money, and they, as a result of that, they made some trades? Because I mean, as you mentioned, McNally didn't really want to be in Montreal, and kind of lost interest and wasn't very good once he got here.
Yeah, they back in those days, there were, I guess, some players who didn't want to be. They didn't want to pay the players too much. And there's a story I think I mentioned in the book too, that Ken Singleton was a black guy who had married a white gal from Quebec, and the story goes that may have been one of the reasons why the Expos wanted to trade Ken Singleton is because of that. But if that was a reason, then it's not a very good reason, Joe.
No. And when you think about it, this is Montreal, the first professional home of Jackie Robinson, right? So for Montreal, for Montreal management to have that kind of an attitude, that would not be copacetic, and that was the reason they traded Ken Singleton.
No, it's unfortunate that the Expos wanted to do that and trade Ken Singleton. They're trading one of the best players to Baltimore for a guy who was established and getting up there in years, and Dave McNally, and didn't turn out to be a very good trade.
Well, they made a few of those, and you touched on a lot of them. They had a chance to get Nolan Ryan from the Mets before his Hall of Fame even got started. Tell us a little bit about that. Wouldn't Nolan Ryan have looked good in an Expos uniform?
Yeah, for sure. Nolan Ryan, in those early days with the Mets was really, coming on, and the Expos, for some reason passed on him, and if they'd been able to get Nolan Ryan, he would have been part of that team for a number of years. It's kind of a head scratcher, Joe, for sure.
When reading your book, I forgot. Of course, I remember '81. I can't ever forget '81. I remember very, very clearly. But how close you were before that, like in '79, they actually had a slim lead over the Pirates back in September 24th. They had a slim lead, but then lost to the Bucks over the next couple of days. And Willie Pop Stargell was a killer, killed a lot of teams. And then, of course, Gary Carter got hurt. Pirates, of course, went on to win it all. But you remember those days. Tell us a little bit about what happened to the Expos over that little stretch there.
Yeah, from 1969 to '78, they had finished out of the playoffs and never had a 500 record. So 1979 came along. They put together a dream team, but they finally put it together. The farm system of products, great players really came together in 79, and they produced a record of 95 and 65, Joe, and still it wasn't good enough to make the playoffs, but they sure put a exclamation mark on the Montreal season by at least coming really, really close. And it was a kind of a heartbreaker not to make the playoffs.
Yeah, Pirates went on. All the Weir family went on to win it all back in '79, and that close. It's kind of reminded me of the Blue Jays back in '85 when they got so close and they were 3-1 up on the Royals. But before that, they gave Detroit a run, and before that they gave Baltimore a bit of a run. They were just close until they finally made it. And then the following year, of course, they actually led the Phillies on the next to last game of the season, but the Phillies rallied. Mike Schmidt, who was another guy who killed a lot of teams, he hit a 2-run homer in extra innings off Stan Bonson.
Yeah,
and it
that
turns
was
out,
one of the,
tell us about that.
a really heartbreaking moment for the Expos again in 1980, coming so close again, and Stan Bonson gives up that gopher ball to Mike Schmidt, and Mike Schmidt not exactly a poor hitter, an excellent hitter, and he parked it. And see, the interesting story about that at bat was that John DeCusto was also in the bullpen for the Expos and had a super record against Mike Schmidt, even better than Stan Bonson. Stan Bonson actually pitched really good against Mike Schmidt in his career, and John DeCusto was even better than Stan Bonson. So that's in the book too, and it's unfortunate maybe that John DeCusto didn't go in and fish Bonson, but Mike Schmidt was a money player all his career, and he sure came through in that moment and set the Expos down.
Yeah, and you talk about John DeCusto, who had that great record against Schmidt, and apparently I don't think Dick Williams really knew about that, but DeCusto did and didn't speak up about it, and it could have been a little bit different,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah, like as you say, Dick Williams found out later that DeCusto was pretty good against Schmidt, and Dick was saying, "Well, hey John, how come you didn't tell me about that?" Well, maybe you should know that, Dick, or something like that.
It's your job to know that. You're the manager, aren't you? Last time I checked. But okay, so '81 finally the promised land, right? The Expos reached the postseason. It's going to be 40 years next month that they made the postseason, and that the weird season, the split season. And tell us about your memories about that and what you touched on in the book a little bit.
Yeah, so in May of 1981 was a pivotal move when they traded star outfielder Ellis Valentine to the Mets for Jeff Rudin. Now, Ellis had a checkered career with the Expos, a lot of potential, but a lot of problems with drugs and an attitude that he didn't really want to practice with the Expos. He didn't want to put much time into being on the field before the game started. And they finally just get fed up with Ellis Valentine and traded him. And Jeff Rudin became one of the best relievers in Expos history. And then the trade, or excuse me, the strike came, and then they finally got back on the field. And then early September, they fired Dick Williams and brought in Jim Fanning, who had no experience until going back many years as a minor league manager. It was kind of dumbfounding, but Jim Fanning was the manager who finally got the Expos into the playoffs, and they clinched with a a regular season win against the Mets, and finally they were in the playoffs. But Dick Williams had a lot of respect, but John McHale, I guess, he get fed up with Dick Williams too after a number of years, and made a pretty brash decision to bring in Jim Fanning, but it did work out. And, finally they get into the playoffs and they beat the Phillies 3-2 in the best of 5, went to a best of 5, the 5th game at the Dodgers, and came so close and losing out on Blue Monday in 1981.
Yeah, Steve Rogers in relief to pitch to Rick Monday, and it was just it's just the way it worked out, right? But you look at that team, and Steve Rogers, Gary Carter, the Kid, the Hawk, Andre Dawson, the Rock, Tim Raines. The Expos should have been a contender for years, but then of course there were a couple of other extenuating circumstances, and you talked about in the book. There's the drug use and the iffy trades. Yeah, Tim Raines, he talked about admitting after that he had a serious cocaine problem. He would eventually get sober, and let's talk about the turnaround by the Rock. Going from a guy who used to use cocaine, he admitted between innings in the clubhouse, and to going to become a 7-time All-Star, National League batting champ, 2-time World Series winner, and of course a Hall of Famer. Let's talk about Tim a little bit.
1981, he had a tremendous year, 70 stolen bases in a strike-shortened season. And Joe, if he had played the full, 162 games in 1981, he would have stolen over 100 bases. And then he came back in 82. After the 81 season, he got went back home to Florida, and that's when he got messed up doing drugs, and he continued that pattern through most of the 1982 season. And he still had a half-decent year, but his head and body were mixed up with drugs, and just didn't have the best season that he should have. And eventually he got it all sorted out, and he got off the drugs and produced a fantastic career with the Expos, and then later with the White Sox and the Yankees. So he finally turned it around and get into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, go. Yeah, for sure. I was just going to say that. It's like, it is a good story because it tells us, personally, as somebody who's gone through had addiction problems myself, I know it. It is possible to turn things around. I know he went into rehab. His life changed, and ended up playing 23 seasons of Major League Baseball. Still 808 bases, 4th in the all-time list, and just a great, really a pillar, a great player, a great example, and a guy who helped a lot of young players, and good on him. I want to talk a little bit about Gary Carter, the Kid. Now, some called him Camera because of the fact that he never met one he didn't like, but he also, he was legit. When you saw Gary Carter smiling, it's from what I read in your book, it's pretty genuine. He's just generally a pretty happy guy.
Yeah, for sure. He was down to earth and genuine, as you say, and there's nothing really fake about him. It's just that when he smiles so much, some of the other players didn't like it that much. Andre Dawson didn't care much for Gary Carter, but the good thing is that Carter produced on the field to back up that smile. He was a great catcher with one of the dirtiest positions in baseball behind home plate, and he put together a great career. The only problem with Gary Carter was that he wanted the big contract, and Charles Brompton, the majority owner, decided to give him that contract. But after the 1984 season, he instructed general manager Murray Cook to trade Gary Carter because he just didn't want to be stuck with that big contract, which didn't expire until the end of the 1989 season.
Well, another case of being cheap and making a trade because you want to save a few bucks, and in the long term health of the franchise, it probably turned out to be not a really good idea. One thing that I noted in the book too that I want to touch on for a second here. Now, the Expos drafted some guys who turned out to be pretty good quarterbacks. A guy named Conrad Holloway, Matt Dunnigan, and some fellow named Tom Brady. Tell us about how Tom Brady and how close he came to becoming an Expo and why he didn't become an Expo.
Yeah, and so in June of 1995, the Expos decided to draft Tom Brady. And what happened was that a few days later, he lives, born and raised in the San Francisco area, decided to come to a game that the Expos were playing against the Giants at Candlestick Park for a bit of a tryout with BP batting practice. So that's when he kind of showed off what he could do, and he met up with some of the players and Felipe Alou in the clubhouse. And so what happened was that he was, decided to play football at Michigan, and figured that he would have a better chance in the NFL, being drafted and playing in the NFL, but with the New England Patriots, and decided very oddly that he thought that he was having, problems, with a little bit of pain playing as a catcher in baseball, and thought that he would have a better chance as a quarterback in the NFL. And so that's what happened, Joe, that he decided he would be better off playing football than playing baseball. And, some of his teammates with the Expos in the clubhouse that time in June of 95 figured, they told him that in the early days of the minor leagues, he wouldn't make very much money in the minor leagues. And it may take him a while before he would get to the majors. And they actually suggested to him that he should stay with football.
Right, and go to Michigan, where you can be a star and maybe get. But it's crazy when you think a guy doesn't want to play baseball because it beats up his body too bad. Instead, I'm going to be a quarterback in the NFL. That doesn't make sense to me, but that was his logic at the time, right? Yeah.
Now he probably.
But until let's do the. Yeah.
Playing making a lot more money as an NFL player than as a baseball catcher. Kevin Malone, the general manager of the Expos at the time, thought that Brady could be a first-line catcher with the Expos, but you never know how a guy might pan out. And it turned out that Brady was better off, had such a great career. And of course, he's still playing with Tampa Bay, having a great career.
I know. Go figure. So now, and the thing is too, is who knows that Brady's going to be the kind of quarterback that he is, because at Michigan, he wasn't highly rated. He wasn't considered to be the kind of game-breaking quarterback that he turned out to be. And he just I think part of him is the attitude that he had. He was going to be successful probably no matter what he did. He might have been a Hall of Fame catcher, who knows? With his kind of ability and attitude and gamesmanship, it might have worked out for him in baseball as well.
Yeah, for certainly. The Expos scouts and Kevin Malone, the general manager, were pretty high on him, and whether he would have turned out to be a Hall of Fame catcher in baseball, it's hard to say, but they certainly were pretty high on Tom Brady as a baseball player.
Okay, let's talk about the greatest Expo team ever, probably, the way it looked anyway, in '94. And of course, that was the season they shut it down. Was that the death knell for the Expos, and how good a team was that?
Oh, they were good from top to bottom. The starting rotation was great. The bullpen was top notch, and they had some great offense. It was probably a little bit better than that team in 1981. I used to call that 94 team what they put together on offense like a fire wagon offense that was hit and run and a lot of offense, stealing bases. And, they had Larry Walker and Moises Alou and Marquise Grissom and Darren Fletcher behind the plate, Sean Berry at third, Will Cordero at short. They had some great offensive players, and that was the time when they needed to win because the payroll was really small, and they had an ownership group not owned by a big billionaire. It was owned by a bunch of small millionaires who didn't really have a lot of money, and when that season wasn't played, and the players went out on strike on August the 12th, and the season was canceled on September the 14th. That was a real tragedy for the Montreal Expos franchise. And what happened, Joe, in spring training in 1995, they ended up trading Ken Hill and Marquise Grissom and John Rutland and never offered a contract to Larry Walker. It was a real tragedy, and that was the beginning of the end of the Expos, Joe.
I want to get back to that for a second, but first I want to talk a little bit about Larry Walker, just inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame, second Canadian to be inducted in the Hall of Fame. He could have been a member of the Blue Jays at one point. Tell us about that.
Well, that's right. In 1984 was a pivotal year for Larry Walker. That was the year he signed with the Expos in November 1984, but he played in two major tournaments that year, the 1984 World Youth Tournament in Kindersley, Saskatchewan, and then at a tournament in his native province of BC, in Grand Forks, BC, where he was noticed in both tournaments by a lot of scouts, including the Blue Jays. The Blue Jays scout that watched him in Kindersley was also his Team Canada's coach, Jim Ridley, and for some reason they didn't like Larry Walker enough as a player. It was really kind of ridiculous. And on his recent Zoom call, Larry Walker said there was very minimal interest in the Blue Jays. I've heard since then that they didn't like his partying as a teenager, as a kid, and but who could not like Larry Walker's talents at 16, 17, 18 years old? And the Expo scout from Portland, Oregon, Bob Rogers, was on him for 3 or 4 years before the Expos finally signed him. And he found out that Larry Walker was eligible to sign in November of '84, and he flew from Portland, Oregon to the Vancouver airport in Richmond, BC, went to the Walker household and signed up Larry Walker, and he went on to have some 5+ good years with the Expos and 9+ more years with the Rockies, where he cemented his career as a Hall of Fame player.
You refer to Larry as a 6-tool player. We often refer to baseball players as 5-tool players. Explain why Larry Walker was a 6-tool player.
Yeah, he was had the vision. He had the perception of seeing the play ahead of him on the field. He knew what to do. He had that knowledge that looking a play ahead, like the play Joe in 1992, where Tony Fernandez of the Padres hit a line drive single, or what Fernandez thought was a line drive single to right field, but Larry Walker came in and threw him out of first base. Tim Wallach was the first baseman, and he shocked Tony Fernandez. And with a 9-3 play. And in his recent Zoom call, Larry Walker said that Tony Fernandez was upset with Larry Walker for some time after for throwing him out. Yeah,
You don't do that, man. You don't do that. You can't do that. Yeah, I can do that.
yeah. So Walker had, on top of his physical tools, he had that mental game that made him so valuable.
So I wanted now getting back to the '94 season, and then ultimately the Expos leaving 2005. So who would you say was the most responsible for the Expos leaving Montreal? Like Claude Brochu, Lucien Bouchard, Jeffrey Laurier, Bud Selig, Charles Bronfman, local business community, the fans. Is there somebody in that group where you would pinpoint and say this is probably why they left?
Yeah, it's a good way you pose that question, Joe. You mentioned a bunch of people, and I have to agree that they all sort of combined to send the team out of town in a way, because the fans, in a way, did not support the team for many years. So you have to partly blame the fans. I try not to blame Claude Brochu too much because he personally didn't have a lot of money. He was the managing general partner of that consortium, and the consortium members didn't want to put up too much money on their own when they were asked to put up more money. And then you have Jeffrey Laurier that people hated to this day. Uh, Bud Selig was the commissioner at that time. Um, so they all combined, and some of the fans say that Bud Selig and Major League Baseball didn't care that much about having a team in Montreal. So there was a number of people that contributed to the demise of the Expos, Joe.
Is there any chance now that the Expos could return to Montreal? Do you believe that there's a chance, or do you believe that there's a good chance, I should say?
I would say in a few years, I think the pandemic maybe has pushed things back to the back burner a little bit. But I think, either through expansion or relocation of Tampa Bay or even Miami, um, two teams that are not doing very good in Florida financially or at the gate. But the experiment that they want to talk about with sharing Tampa Bay with Montreal starting in 2027, it's a long time away. And even that idea doesn't make any sense at all, sharing teams or games with Tampa Bay and Montreal. I think what's going to happen, Joe, is that Major League Baseball in a few years' time will give Tampa Bay the approval to sell 100% to the Montreal ownership group, and that they will be in Montreal in a few years' time.
Well, I sure hope so, man. I miss that team. I was a big Expos fan as a kid, and then the Blue Jays came to town and things. I like both teams. It was always great to cover both teams to enjoy watching them both play and man, my heart was broken in '81, like a lot of Canadians. Uh, but let's switch gears now to the other team you covered, the Toronto Blue Jays. What are your thoughts on this year's club?
Boy, are they turning heads in the last few days, in the last couple of weeks. It looks like they are going to challenge for a wild card. It's a very exciting, talented team. With Vladdy Guerrero and Simeon and Teoscar Hernandez and Bo Bichette. And then one guy that I'm really happy who is coming to the forefront this year who hasn't maybe done as much as he should have in the past is Lourdes Gurriel. He's really put together quite a fantastic season. The other guys doing a little bit more than him, but I'm happy for Gurriel because he didn't do quite as much as he did in his first few years, and now he's turning it around, and he's helping to make that team. Boy, it's really really exciting. The team, a chance for a dynasty in the next few years if they keep these guys together.
Right, and Gurriel started this season slowly too. I mean, it was he wasn't doing a lot earlier on in the season, but man, you talk about turning it on. Mid-August, they went through a stretch where they were 4-9. 3 weeks ago, they were 9.5 games behind the Yankees, and now look where they are. They're leading the Yankees and the Red Sox. They're in the number one wild card spot. What happened in that last 3 weeks to make this to give us the situation we're in right now?
Yeah, see what they did. They get off to a pretty good start, and then they went into a lull. Even Guerrero went into a slump, and some of the other guys maybe slumped a bit too. But then they finally put it together again on offense, like they had been doing in spurts at the start of the year. And the bullpen is getting a little bit better, and the starting rotation is getting a little bit better. So putting all that stuff together, they've really come to the forefront to be a challenge in the American League this year.
Yeah, we're looking at Robbie Ray now. Okay, so it could be between Robbie Ray and maybe Garrett Cole for the Cy Young. Ray struck out 10 batters or more in 4 straight starts. First Jay to ever do that. Only had 8 hits. Only had 8 strikeouts against the Orioles Friday, so had a bit of a slump. But this is a guy who's been incredible. I mean, where did this come from? Because last year at this time, he was considered to be one of the worst pitchers in the majors.
Well, yeah, and that's something to have a pitcher like that to come out of, I guess, relative obscurity to have a great year this year. And I guess it's going to be a challenge, Joe, for the Blue Jays to try to keep him beyond this year. But he's really had a tremendous year to keep the Blue Jays in the hunt for a wild card.
I'm thinking if they make the playoffs, they have to open the wallets, open the bank, and just get Robbie Ray signed, get Marcus Semien signed. I mean, these are 2 guys that people talk about them leaving as if it's like a foregone conclusion that they're going to. No, why? This is a big league market, and this is a big league team. Why not do everything you can to keep these guys, right?
Exactly. They have the potential for a dynasty, and guys like Ray and Semien are looking at this club, a young, exciting club that could be contenders for a few years. So I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that they're going elsewhere. It's just that management and Rogers are going to have to pony up, I guess, for maybe 4 or 5 year deals to keep these guys.
Yep, got to do it. You want to play with the big boys, you got to do it. Let's talk about Vlad. Can he win the MVP award? I mean, Ohtani pitches and hits, but Vlad might just win himself a triple crown. He now leads the majors in home runs.
Yeah, and it's something, a chip off the old block with Vladdy Guerrero Sr. and sort of so-so the first couple of years with the Blue Jays, but boy, he certainly turned it on this year. He's hitting balls in the strike zone compared to his father, who would go down at his feet and over his head. Guerrero had that little bit of a slump there several weeks ago, but he's really turned it on like he was at the start of the year, and he's certainly going to challenge Ohtani for MVP award.
Yeah, and it's going to be a tough call, because you look at Ohtani and he's the guy who first guy my lifetime. I mean, Babe Ruth did it, right? But you know, a guy who could win a Cy Young award and a you know, potentially a home run title in the same year, at the same time. But you know, Vlad is just such a machine out there. He's just you know, a triple crown. It would be quite an accomplishment. We're talking like Ted Williams type of player, right? So yeah, it would be. I mean, I don't vote on this. I don't know if you do, Danny, but you know, but the people who do have a tough decision to make here, don't they?
Yeah, like, Guerrero, um, his potential, he's showing a lot of what he can do this year. The amazing power that he has to all field, even right field, Joe, he's pounding them into the right field seats. And he'll go to deep center, you go to deep left. Well, it's just, boy, there's his power is
Yeah,
something else, and he's got a great batting average too.
right. Yeah, triple crown guy. So here's what I'm thinking too. To me, for me, it comes down to this. Okay, Otani's special player, pitches and hits. Okay, great. But Vlad, if he leads his team into the playoffs, to me, that's the thing that's going to give the nod in Vladdy's favor to me.
Yeah, I think that the MVP award uh, could tilt toward Guerrero because his playoff team is the Blue Jays are in the hunt for a wild card, and if they did make the playoffs, certainly it would help his chances for winning that trophy, or the MVP award and so on.
Well, let's hope that he continues, and let's hope the Jays continue over the last few weeks here and get this thing wrapped up because can't wait to watch some playoff baseball back in Canada again. So anyway, thank you for being on the show, Danny. Once again, the book is called Always Remembered, New Revelations and Old Tales about those fabulous Expos. I suggest you pick one up, Danny. Thank you for being on the show. Love to do it again sometime. We will come back and talk about Expos. Sorry, the Expos return, and maybe we'll talk about the Jays run to the World Series. Thank you, my
Yeah,
friend.
look at Joe. I also have another Expos book out that's called Never Forgotten. And now, while I was waiting to come on the show with you, I was pounding out more chapters for another book down the road. But we'll keep in touch as to
Oh,
what I'm doing at the typewriter.
we'll do that one too, my friend. We'll talk about that one. All right. Keep us posted.
Thanks
Thanks,
again, Joe,
Danny.
for having me on the show.
Thank you, sir. Hi, Joe Tilley here from Joe Tilley's Great Canadian Sports Show. Did you know that in 1965, Canada's George Chavella was robbed of the WBA Heavyweight Championship of the World? That's right, Chavella clearly and soundly beat Ernie Terrell for the title at Maple Leaf Gardens, but was denied the championship by a mob-backed decision. The crown should have belonged to George. Now we're trying to get George, who just turned 84 and is suffering from dementia, that well-deserved belt. How can we make this possible? Simple. Head over to WBAboxing.com and file your complaint. The more we complain, the more likely it will be that we force the commission to do something about it. Let's do it, folks.
Guests on Joe Tilley Sports receive a gift certificate from Classica Imports. Top of the line imported men's clothing. Check out the Classica Essential Collection now. Go to shopclassica.com. Slow play. It's a slippery slope. First you go looking for that lost ball, and then everything goes sideways. There are a lot of golfers on the course. Make certain of your point of entry, look quickly, and move on. Remember, we're here for a good time, not a long time. Find anything, Bob?
Not yet.
Addiction Rehab Toronto, Toronto's #1 alcohol and drug treatment center, saving lives, reuniting families. The only treatment center in the province to offer medical detox, treatment, sober living, and lifetime aftercare all in one place. Our unique and specialized programs are designed to equip our clients with the tools to successfully lead a life of dignity, respect, and purpose. Let us help save your life or your loved one's life. Call today for more information or to facilitate an intervention. 1-855-787-2424 or visit addictionrehabtoronto.ca. Joe Tilley Sports is brought to you by COSA, Central Ontario Standardbred Association, providing a united voice for harness horse people racing at Ontario tracks. Check out your benefits today at COSAonline.com and check out COSA TV on Facebook and YouTube for all the latest harness news and live action updates. Live racing year-round. Go to hpibet.com for all your wagering options. Become a member today, and your first bet is free. That's hpibet.com.
Time now for my COSA Swiss pick of the week. You know, last week I went to Mohawk for the big race, the $1 million Pepsi North America Cup. Bulldog Hanover, the favorite, with Jody Jamieson and Buggy, had been the best in the eliminations. Jody, a guest on the show this last week, took Bulldog Hanover to the front early. Rocky Road Hanover followed him. Perfect Sting, the other limb, made a charge at the three-quarter mark. Desperate Man, who got a terrific trip for Trevor Henry, was on the mission. Here's a call from Ken Middleton.
In those strides, he's a Pepsi North America Cup winner, and he scores in 1:49.3. Desperate Man.
Yes, and it was most of Arthur, Ontario in the winner's circle. Trevor Henry, the driver, trained by Kathy Chikeen, owned by Kathy and John Chikeen, and Nicole and Paul Davies. Desperate Man paid $17.20 to win. The 653 Triactor returned $203 on a $2 ticket. This week, I'm going to Tuesday night's 7th race at Mohawk, and I'll take Chris Christopherou and the number 8 horse Stonebridge Strong, coming off a strong finish and a victory last time out. I'm betting $5 win place, and I'm also going to take a $1 exacta box of 5, 7, and 8. My bankroll is now at $148. For all the racing updates, visit COSA TV on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Go to hpibet.com for your wagering options, and check out the latest stake schedule. Well, the Argos give the Ticats a little bit of payback for that loss in Hamilton on Labor Day. DJ Foster had a lovely 40-yard touchdown run, and the Toronto defense was huge. The Cats thought they had tied it with about a minute to go, but they missed the extra point on a late touchdown, boing, off the upright. The Boat Guys held on to win at 17-16 as they improved to 3-2. The Argos and Rough Riders square off this week, a couple of 3-2 teams. The Cats get the 2-4 Stamps. The 5-1 Bombers are in Edmonton, and the Lions hook up with the Alouettes. Former Canadian boxing champ Colin Fraser passed away this past June. He was 80 years old. Colin was a Hall of Fame boxer and Canadian junior welterweight champion during the years 1967, 68, and 69. He finished his professional career with a record of 32 wins, 11 losses, with 15 knockouts. When Colin passed away on June 19th at his long-term care home, he left behind a treasure trove of very rare and valuable boxing memorabilia for his children, Kevin Colin Jr. and Kimberly Cheryl. Sadly, Fraser's boxing memorabilia was taken from his room at his long-term care facility at Cawthra Gardens in Mississauga. The family is now reaching out in an effort to get their beloved father's memorabilia back. His entire belongings were not given to the family, as he received nothing from Chartwell or Cawthra Gardens. He had personal boxing items autographed by his friend George Chavella. Muhammad Ali also signed fight pick of Sonny Liston. Fraser boxed on the undercard of the March 29, 1966 World Heavyweight title fight between Chavella and Ali at the Gardens, yes. And anyone with any information regarding these stolen items, please contact the Peel Police, or you can call his daughter, Kim Cheryl Fraser, at 647-703-5474. Hockey Helps the Homeless is your chance to play with the pros for a great cause. Enter your team today. That's our charity of choice here on Joe Tilley's Great Canadian Sports Show. Enter your teams today or visit as an individual at hockeyhelpsthehomeless.com. Suit up, skate, and score with some all-time NHL greats at various locations across the country. Feed the hungry, help them back on their feet, help keep young folks off the street. There are 14 tournaments nationwide. October 29th is the first stop in Waterloo. Then it's Calgary, York Region, Halifax, Vancouver, Winnipeg, Peel, Barrie, Saskatoon, Montreal, Durham Region, Bay Street, Edmonton, and London. This event has helped raise $2.5 million for those who really need it. Once again, it's hockeyhelpsthehomeless.com. And we close with a look at the folks who make this show possible. These are friends, trusted business associates, and all-around great folks. We highly recommend them all. Reminder that the show is available on Spotify, Breaker, Radio Public, Google Podcasts, Pocket Cast, as well as the Spanglish Network and Zingo TV. Thanks once again to Danny Gallagher for being on the show, and we'll see you next week when Ron Fellows, that great Canadian racing legend, drops by. We'll see you then.
Brian Gribben Insurance Planning, helping you solidify your financial future.
At BGIP, what we do that's unique in the marketplace is we show people how to spend and enjoy their money in their early years of retirement without the fear of running out. Also, we're able to do this without you having to change financial advisors. Please look us up at bgip.ca today, and let's book a 30-minute phone call to see how we can bring value to you and your family in your planning.
Call Brian today for all your retirement needs. We did. 905-686-5678. Brought to you by MNP, a leading Canadian national accounting, tax, and business consulting firm. MNP proudly serves and responds to the needs of our clients in the private, public, and non-for-profit sectors. Through partner-led engagements, MNP provides a collaborative, cost-effective approach to doing business and personalized strategies to help people and organizations succeed across the country and around the world. With local offices in Oshawa, Toronto, Mississauga, Burlington, and more, our team is here to support you. Visit mnp.ca to learn more. Make your next getaway a spectacular one at this luxury cottage on Rice Lake near Bewdley from Verona Real Estate Group. Perfect for a large or extended family retreat, an ideal location for any corporate morale-boosting getaway, employee bonding session, a week here and you're set. A beautiful, spacious building for up to 10 guests, featuring 5 bedrooms, 3.5 baths, state-of-the-art kitchen facilities, and more. Enjoy swimming, excellent fishing options, just an hour and a half from Toronto. Book for any and all seasons. Fully winterized, ice fishing, cross-country ski trails, and downhill skiing available nearby. Book today by calling Amir at 647-657-6571 or email amir@veronarealestategroup.com.